Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Draskyl here, back with another video for patch 7.21D. Today we're going to be talking all about the position 5 heroes that you can pick, when you can pick them, and all sorts of other fun stuff. Just as a quick, PSA, this is, again, 7.21D, the patch, and this is going to be covering position 5, so if you don't hear the hero that you like to play listed in this video, don't worry, there's going to be a lot more. We're doing a full series of these, and then after we're done doing the position 5s, we're going to move on to the position 4s, and we're going to go all the way up to 1. So if there's ever a patch in the future, we'll probably release another iteration of this video, but today we're talking about 5s. We're going to break it down into a couple of different categories of position 5 heroes, and today we're going to be starting all about the strong laners. So strong laners basically just cover the I'm going to pick this hero early, and I know for a fact that it's going to pretty much secure my lane, or at the very least give me a fighting chance in the early game. So, first hero that we're going to talk about in regards to the strong laners is BANE. BANE has one of the absolute best early game stats of any hero. You can see his stat spread here. It's very, very nice. 23 strength, agility, and intelligence. His stat gains are very respectable, on top of very good base damage, good base armor, and over 300 movement speed. Now, the only downside to this hero's laning phase is his attack range. It's not really that high. But this hero is really good at trading in the early game, primarily because of Brain Sap. This is an ability that is pure damage, so magic resistance does nothing against it whatsoever. It does 75 damage per rank, and it also heals you for the amount that you deal damage. So at first glance, you look at it and it's 75 damage, and you say, well, there are definitely supports in the game who have much, much higher nukes for single target damage at level 1. That's true. But as long as you're missing 75 health when you cast the spell, you're healing that damage and also hitting that hero for 75 every single time, which means it's more around 150 damage difference that is going to be dealt as long as you're not already sitting at full health. So really good stuff for the lane. Then you have Nightmare. This is an ability that can be used in a plethora of ways. It can be used to save people. There is I believe it's 1 second invulnerability window as soon as you cast a Nightmare on any unit, which can be used to disjoint attacks. You can use it offensively to make sure that you can set up for a gank, so on and so forth. And we're not going to talk too much about the ulti or enfeeble, even though they are very useful in their own right, just because we're really focused on the lane. So if you want to, I feel like BANE is one of the really strong laners that you can pick if you feel so inclined. All right, so next here on the list, this one has actually been nerfed quite a few times. We're actually going to cheat here, and we're just going to hit C so we can find him. There we go. All right, so CHEN is the next one we're going to talk about. This hero has gotten a slew of nerfs, mostly pertaining to Divine Favor. You can see the list right here ever since 7.21. The different amount of times this ability has been changed or nerfed is pretty significant, but I still want to put him under the strong laner category because Divine Favor is still a great skill, and then on top of that you have Holy Persuasion, so you can obviously get your creep army going, and you can also use this to teleport your allies around the map. That part of the skill is a little bit more towards the mid game, so again we're going to stay focused on what makes him a good laner. His mobility is high, he has good base damage, his attack range is actually 650. This is higher than probably 95% of the Dota heroes, maybe even more than that actually by a percentage, but his attack range is enormous. His armor isn't the greatest, but he's got good speed, his base health is good, his int gain is good, which means he's going to scale in damage from auto-attacking very well. So as long as you're really good with your Divine Favors and you're applying this to whatever hero you're supporting in lane, then you're going to be having a good time. The most common pairings you see with this hero are usually like, I think Phantom Assassin was the one that we were seeing a lot at MDL. You just put it on, it heals your core, gives them bonus damage, you can use it to fight, you can even put it on your creep if you want. So CHEN, another one of those heroes that it does require a little bit of micro, but he offers a huge kit. You also have the Penitence, I guess, which is definitely something that you could scale in lane. It's a slow, it's on a pretty low cooldown, it lasts for 5 seconds, and anyone that hits it gets the 30 attack speed on top of that. So all of this hero's early game kit is pretty strong. The next hero we're going to talk about is Wisp, another hero that's gotten nerfed a bunch. And the reason I want to put him on this list, even looking at his base stats, they're not really impressive. A lot of people who are newer to the game are looking at this and going, this hero has 280 movement speed, and less than 600 attack range, and pretty mediocre damage with 0.2 armor. What makes this hero good in the lane? And the answer to that question is just his first ability, Tether. Now, when you tether someone, you get to, every time that you heal or gain mana, you transfer it to whatever hero that you are tethered to. So if you are supporting someone in the lane and you tether to them, you can heal up their health and their mana at any given point. And it also, if you read the patch notes, you're not moving at your own movement speed. You're moving at whatever hero's speed that you're tethered to. So if the hero that you're tethered to is moving at 350 and you're only 280, you're still moving at 350 regardless. So that's why the mobility factor and his base movement speed doesn't really play too much of a role in his laning phase. So you can use this hero whenever you have someone that you really want to just keep sturdy in the lane. You can also use it to get the movement speed bonus for heroes like Ursa, who kind of just want to run at people and just stack up the Fury Swipes and get a lot of damage in. It's one of the most common pairings that we've seen for a while. And then, of course, you have the Spirits, which deal a tremendous amount of damage. He summons quite a few of them. I think it's 5 or 6. I want to double check to make sure. Wait, it doesn't actually say it on the ability, but either way, he summons a lot of Spirits. They deal very good damage. They slow every single time they hit. And the mana cost for the damage that it does is actually not too bad. So Spirit's really good for clearing stacks, good for harassing in the lane. And then on top of that, we have Overcharge. So Overcharge used to not have a cooldown. It does now, but it's different in the sense that the level 1 Overcharge gives you 50 attack speed, which is substantial. That's essentially a Hyperstone worth of attack speed for 1 skill point, and it only costs 40 mana to give this Overcharge to whatever ally you are in the lane. So if you're all about supporting and you want to just kind of be that guy who's following your core around and making sure that he's healthy, giving him the ability to like clear stacks easily or just sustain in his lane, then Io is a hero that you're probably going to want to look at. All right, so next up, and this is probably more of a controversial one, but we are in the category of strong laners. And when it comes to just being strong in the lane, you don't really get much stronger than a hero like Spiritbreaker. He has, I think, either the second or third highest effective health pool for physical damage just in the game. He has 780 starting health. He has 4.7 armor. His mobility is low, but keep in mind that he does scale and move speed pretty well with things like Bulldoze, which give you movement speed when you pop it. So this hero got really good damage. His average damage is 65. And he is melee, so that could be one thing that you could say, okay, in some situations, maybe I don't want to first pick this hero, but if you see another melee walking to, say, the offlane, for example, and you know that you can trade hits, then Spiritbreaker is definitely a hero that you can use to just walk up and assert your dominance in the lane. So his skill set, Charge, this gives you the bonus speed. This goes over the base movement speed cap, which is 550. So this bonus charge speed is just on top of whatever you already have. That means at level 1 charge with no boots, you're going 585, right? Very, very fast charge. And this also scales with the Bulldoze, which can be activated while you're charging, which means that you're getting 30% at level 4 movement speed on top of whatever your charge plus your base movement speed is. In short, this hero moves really freaking fast. So you get to scale the stun duration with the charge. Bulldoze gives you status resistance and movement speed, as we've already talked about. Status resistance is amazing. There's not too many sources of it in Dota, but essentially what it does is lowers the duration of any crowd control effect, silences, damage over times. It kind of does it all. So when you have 60%, every single stun or root or anything that's cast on you lasts less than half the time. His bread and butter skill here, Greater Bash. This just gives you a chance to obviously stun and knock back any target that you're going to be hitting. In addition, it also gives you movement speed as damage. So if you have 400 movement speed or whatever, you get 30% of that. It's something like 120 damage bonus that you get on top of the stun and the knockback duration. So this hero, again, really strong in the lane, even has pretty good base health regen, 3.7. This is something that can't really be underestimated in the early game, especially for heroes like Spiritbreaker who want to be in the fray. They want to be trading hits a lot. Things like high health, high armor, a lot of regen. Definitely very, very good stuff in the lane. So next hero, we're going to be talking about Undying. This is probably one of the heroes that he's very, very good in the lane, but he does have a point where he falls off pretty hard in regards to what he really offers to the team. But if your sole idea of what you want to do is just make sure you win the lane, Undying is certainly a hero that can do that, especially depending on if you get to pick a little bit later into the draft. So, Decay, this is one of the strongest laning utilities just in Dota, I think, almost. It deals damage, but more importantly, in an AoE, it steals strength. So every time you steal strength for Undying, since you are a strength hero, you're getting damage, you're getting health, and if you're laning against other strength heroes, you're taking away damage and health from them. Now, as this is a video about 5, as in the position 5, a lot of the time you will be up against at least one strength hero from the enemy offlane, which means that this spell is even more effective because you get 4 damage, they lose 4 damage, you gain health, they lose health, and it deals an extra DPS on top of that. Plus, if you're really efficient about your decay use, you're going to be hitting more than one target at a time. So always be on the lookout for the offlane heroes kind of clumping together because that's when you can really start to make this hero shine. So next ability is Soul Rip. This is definitely what I would consider one of the 1-point wonder skills. It hits 10 targets, heals or damages for 18. That means the max is 180 damage or healing for 1 point. And it has a 1300 radius, which is huge. So if anything is almost just on your screen, you're essentially going to be getting value from the Soul Rip as long as it's leveled enough. So this is really good for turning fights. It's good for harass. You can just, keep your core alive if they're committing, and you can kind of put yourself in between the enemy team and your core just to make sure that they can't chase out. Now, Tombstone is his team fight or early kind of skirmish ability. It just summons a tomb, creates zombies. The zombies start to stack up, and they deal more and more damage over time, and they also slow on top of that. So the thing about Tombstone, and this is, I guess, more of something for a different video, but there are some lanes where this ability is not as useful. So anything that has very high attack speed, like Ursa, for example, he'll be able to kill a Tombstone very quickly, but against a lot of heroes, they just won't have the tools necessary to be able to attack the Tombstone. And you'll have to differentiate from game to game yourself to decide, hey, is the enemy offlane good at killing my tomb, or is this going to be something that I can use to my benefit? If you can't drop it freely whenever you want, maybe think about skilling just Soul Rip and Decay instead. So, stats-wise, he's 300 movement speed. He's got pretty respectable base damage, 57 to 65. He is melee, of course. He's got 3.6 armor. And his stat gain is actually pretty good. 2.8 intelligence, 2.8 for strength. His edge gain is a little bit on the low side, so you will be lacking armor as you get later into the game. But I like to call this the 8-minute wonder. For the first 8 minutes of the game, Undying is just one of the strongest laning heroes, just bar none, in Dota 2 at this point. So, next up, more of a, I guess, unorthodox kind of position 5 hero. Also can be seen in the position 4. We'll do a video about that a little bit later on. And I thought quite a bit about this before I put Bounty Hunter in this section of the video. But the reason why I put him here is I do feel that there are certain matchups where you can pick this hero and it will be okay. So, for example, I feel like against heroes like Tidehunter, or, we don't see Underlord much, but any of these really beefy heroes that kind of walk to the offlane that want to trade, but they don't necessarily want to joust. And what I mean by that is you go and you hit once, and then you run away. That's kind of where Bounty Hunter shines, I feel, against those really kind of slowish, hard to kill, but really easy to kind of harass and kite around heroes. Can definitely bring Bounty Hunter into a position 5 safe lane in a scenario like that. So talking about the hero stats, he's got 315 movement speed, very, very high. 6 armor, also extremely high. His base damage is pretty good on the high end, but it's also low on the low end. So 45 to 59 is a pretty huge spread. But as we were talking about, the main reason why I put this hero in a video about 5s is that I think Janata is something that maybe even a bit underutilized from the 5 role. Because you can just walk up, you get your 80 bonus damage at level 1, you get your gold steal, it's on a 12-second cooldown, and when you have the opportunity to abuse those types of lanes, Bounty Hunter has a great time. So, on top of having the Janata, you got Shuriken Toss, which is a great nuke. It's 150 damage at level 1 on a 9-second cooldown. It does cost quite a bit of mana, but it's one of those things that can be used to cancel TPs. It offers a huge amount of damage for any kind of gank, so if you have another hero on the map that can stun. You can do like TPs and gank for that guy. You get the Janata level 1 Shuriken. That's already, what, 230 damage just from 2 spells? And only one of them costs mana at that point. So third skill, the Shadow Walk, makes you invisible. When you come out of Shadow Walk and you hit someone, you get a nice little slow on top of that for 4 seconds. So this hero, very mobile, very annoying for a lot of melee matchups, and even some ranged heroes as well have a hard time dealing with bounty hunters like Oracle or Lich. Anything that doesn't have a stun or a way to get the bounty hunter to run back and stop harassing is a game where you want to think about maybe picking up this hero. So next on the list for the strong lanes, see if I can find her, there she is. So Vengeful Spirit. A lot of people, I think, maybe undervalue this hero still. And the reason why I put her on the strong laning list is mainly because her stat gain for strength and agi is bonkers. It's so good. 2.9 strength gain, 3.8 agility for a position 5. That means at level 3 or 4, when your lane gets to that point, your base damage and your base health and mana aren't amazing by any stretch, but you got 4 armor, you're only slightly below the average movement speed. And once you get a couple of levels, your stats are just going to skyrocket, and all of a sudden you become this absolute beast of a laner. So skill set wise, we got a stun. It's not impressive in its duration, but it still does 175 damage at level 2, 100 damage at level 1. The mana cost is a bit on the high side, but Venge is one of those heroes where I feel like you really want to commit to the engagement. So as soon as you start and you cast your spells, it doesn't really matter if they cost a lot of mana, as long as that hero that you're committing to dies. So in that sense, I think Magic Missile is definitely a great spell. So Wave of Terror, this is another one that you're going to want to get in the early laning phase. It's an armor reduction spell. It's 3 armor at level 1, does 60 damage, but the best part about this spell is it gives vision, and it only costs 25 mana. So vision in the laning phase, especially for the safe lane 5s, can be really important for getting a couple of extra right clicks off. So say people are juking in the trees, and you can't reliably chase them because you're scared that they're going to see you before you see them, and then you get into a really awkward situation, right? So that's where Wave of Terror becomes really useful. You can use it to scout, get like 1 or 2 hits off, and then back up. And because it's such a low mana cost, you can throw this out, 10 plus times in the laning phase without having to do more than like maybe pop 1 clarity. So very, very useful spell. And Vengeance Aura, one of the abilities that I love the most about playing this hero, gives you bonus damage. Now, this is off of your base damage. So whatever you're gaining through your stats, whether it be strength, agility, or intelligence, whatever your main stat is, it does not take into account flat additive damage, which would be something like, a blade of attack, for example, would not gain benefit from this. But it gives you a lot of damage and a 1200 radius, which is also, again, as we talked about earlier, it pretty much covers the entire screen that you're on. So when you die with Vengeance Aura, you respawn as an illusion. Now, this illusion can't cast spells, but it still deals the same amount of damage that you dealt, and it takes 50% extra damage until you either respawn or the illusion dies. This is another part about the hero that, as a support, a lot of the time, you're going to be trading and you might even die in the early engagements. There's no other hero in Dota 2 that can come back and get like 3 or 4 or maybe 5 auto attacks off in a fight in the early game. So if they're committing to you in the lane and you die, but your core's, hitting them the entire time, your Vengeance Aura illusion might end up being the reason why you get a kill. So I think Venge is definitely on a list of heroes that can be used in a lane. Very, very good, in my opinion. So next up, we're going to talk about Venom. I'm trying to put every hero that I can think of in this list, by the way. Not all these heroes are considered, meta or tier 1 by a lot of people in Dota right now. But I want to make a comprehensive list for people who maybe are a little bit newer to the game, who want to find something that they enjoy playing that might not be, a tier 1 pick, for example. So we're moving on. We're looking at Venomancer. Now, Veno as a 5 has always been a little bit strange. This used to be one of the strongest heroes in the game if you haven't played for that long. Gale used to just deal a huge amount of damage. It's a slow for 15 seconds, and it used to just be completely insane. Right now, it's kind of a shell of its former glory. It still lasts for 15 seconds. It does initial damage of 25. The damage per tick is pretty low. It's only 10 at level 1. But when you get to 3, the second point into Venomous Gale more than doubles the effective damage of the spell. So for the first level or two, Venom might not feel amazing with just, keeping Gale in mind. But the reason why I wanted to put this hero on the list is because of Poison Sting. This is the ability that I think makes the hero strong in the lane. Now, when you hit someone, you're going to put a damage over time on them every auto attack. And this also ticks immediately, which is important to note. So you can essentially add the damage per second to your base damage because it will go off every single time that you hit the hero, right? It can be used for last hitting and stuff like that. So it's 6 seconds. It does 6 damage a second. And at level 2, again, it more than doubles its effectiveness in terms of damage. It goes from 6 to 14, and the duration increases by 50%. So it's a huge damage increase going from just level 1 to level 4. And by that point, if you have 2 points into Gale, 2 points into Sting, your damage output and your ability to slow whatever you're attacking allows for your core to hit for very, very long periods of time. And even if you end up going down, good chance, as long as your Gale hits, you're going to end up getting a counter kill. So talking about stats, his base health is not very good. It's only 580. His base movement speed is also on the low side, but he's got pretty respectable armor, 4.2. And his base damage, while it's low, it's a very tight range, which means you're getting really good consistency in your hits. And if you add the 6 damage of Poison Sting on top of the 42 to 44, we're looking at 48 to 50, which is much more reasonable than, 42 to 44, which is definitely a little bit on the low side. His attack range is 450, but Gale actually goes pretty far. So if you land a Gale, you're almost certainly going to get quite a few auto attacks off on a hero. This is something that I feel is maybe a little bit unexplored right now, just Venomancer in general. A lot of people, again, put more heroes on a higher tier list than what he brings to the table as a 5, but I do think it's something that situationally could be picked, especially if you're a fan of the hero. So next up, we're going to be looking at one of the strongest heroes, I believe, right now, just in terms of generic laning phase, which is Dazzle. Now, this is another one of those heroes that did get changed a few times, but I don't think it really got nerfed that much. Like, if you look at the patch note changes, which are listed on the abilities, like, the Shadow Wave range got reduced a little bit, and then his Poison Touch mana cost got increased. But as far as what he actually does in the lane, it's not really that different. So the main skill that we're talking about when it comes to laning phase is Poison Touch. And Poison Touch is phenomenal for harass. You throw this on someone, it's 16 damage a second. Every time you throw out an auto attack, it refreshes the duration of the Poison Touch, which means it's going to go from, if it has 1 second left and you hit him, it's going to go back to 4 seconds, which means you're getting an extra 3 or 4 ticks of damage if you hit him at the right time. Or if you just keep auto attacking him right after you cast, they're going to be taking that damage continually until either they get out of range or one of you dies, which is what makes this ability so unbelievably strong in the lane. Not to mention its physical damage. So a lot of heroes don't have high base armor. And the heroes that don't have high base armor really struggle trading with this ability in particular because, again, magic resist base is 25%. But some heroes have way less armor than 25% flat physical damage mitigation. Actually, most of them at level 1 have less than that, which makes Poison Touch, again, just a really great early tool. So, Shallow Grave, this is an ability that you're probably not going to get too often in the first 3 levels, but it can be used as a save. If there's ever a situation where you feel like it's worth skilling, you can definitely put in at least 1 point. I probably wouldn't put more than that. And then Shadow Wave, which is another great ability for not only dealing damage, but keeping your core healthy, pushing out the wave if you need to, and being able to turn a fight. So what Shadow Wave does is you cast it, and it will bounce to yourself. It always hits you, first and foremost, important to note. No matter what, it's always going to hit you. So if I target my core, it's going to hit me and him. But if you cast this on a creep wave, and there's a melee hero going for last hit, you get a huge amount of damage output, and you can use that to counter heroes like Axe, for example, who do that annoying creep cutting thing. That in conjunction with the Poison Touch, really, really good for just being able to, keep your core safe, do a lot of harass, and just keep everyone looking good in your lane. So, stat-wise, his base stats, not amazing, but his strength gain is pretty good, and his int gain is great, which means you're going to be getting a lot of damage, a lot of mana per level. He's got 305 base movement speed, which is above the norm. 2 armor, which not great, but given the fact that his toolkit is very, very strong, he doesn't really need that high of a base armor. And his average damage is 47 to 53, which is right about middle of the line. Now, his attack range is only 550. He's not one of those 600 range heroes. But again, Poison Touch, pretty good range. As long as you get in to hit a few times with the Poison Touch, refresh that duration, it's going to be really nice in the early laning phase. This is actually a hero that I myself am probably going to explore more in the future. So next up, we're going to be looking at Enchantress. And this is another one of those heroes that can get creeps in the early game. Kind of under the same category as Chen, and they both have heals now. They both can get creeps, but I think I might actually put Enchantress maybe even a step higher than Chen in regards to getting the creeps and things like that, because unlike Chen, who is limited by Holy Persuasion levels and what he can get as a creep, Enchantress can pretty much just get it, you know, whenever she wants. So if she wants a Centaur and it spawns in the first camp and you have Enchant, you can get that Centaur. It's not a big deal. So for her, if she wants to, you know, commit to like this laning harass thing, you can go get that creep immediately. And since the enchant cooldown also got significantly buffed, like if you're reading the 7.21 patch notes under the enchant, it went from 55 seconds to 22 seconds. Now, the enchanted creep duration is a lot lower, but the consistency of having a creep is now much higher, right? So you can get that Centaur, walk it into lane. Not a lot of heroes can deal with a large neutral at level 1, right? So you walk it in, you zone them for like a wave, and then the creep, you know, dissipates or whatever, you clear the camp with it, and then you go get another creep and you bring it back. So it's not too bad in that regard. So other skill, Untouchable, that goes from 20 attack speed slow when you're being hit to 70 for just a second point. So this is another skill where you want to think about at least putting 2 in, because the value of this goes up substantially from the second point. So I'm thinking in some games, you might want to consider either going for like a 1 point Untouchable, 1 point Enchant, and then your third skill, Nature's Attendance, which is a heal that heals anything that's standing around you for 10 per second based on how many wisps you currently have out. So if you have 4, it's 40 health a second. If you have 10, then it's 100 health a second, right? So you can have a 1-1-1 build and then potentially put a second point into Untouchable to just make yourself this really impossible to right-click hero with a neutral creep that can deal a lot of damage and also heal the safe laner. So as far as, you know, position 5s go, Chen and Enchantress are a little bit, I guess Chen is a bit more mainstream, but Enchantress is a bit more on the fringe side. Not someone that you see a whole lot, but definitely can add value to a safe lane if you are so inclined to play the heroes that offer a little bit more of a micro playstyle. So next up, we're going to be looking at Grimstroke. This is one of the newer heroes. And this hero used to be extremely overpowered. I don't even mean like a little bit. I mean, this hero was just straight up busted. Since he was released, he's been nerfed a bunch of times, so he's a little bit more reasonable at this state in the game. But one of the main reasons why I wanted to put this hero in the strong laning category is because of Inkswell. So Grimstroke as I guess a theme, is one of those heroes that really likes to have someone else in the lane that runs other heroes. So the most common pairings are like Ursas or Monkey Kings or Juggernauts, these heroes that really benefit from getting additional movement speed and running forward and just hitting whatever is in their way. So when you have Inkswell, you have the bonus movement speed, which I believe is 12% at level 1 now. Yep, it's 12%. So that's almost having a second pair of boots. And it also deals damage and will stun anyone around it at the end of the duration based on how much damage you deal. So Inkswell is one of the best laning tools for those really aggressive safe laners. Very, very cool to have. And then on top of that, you have Phantom's Embrace. Now, this is a combination, you know, again, depending on what you are laning with, can be very, very powerful, because when you throw this Phantom's Embrace on someone, it silences them, and the ghost either has to die or it has to run its duration before the person is able to cast again. Now, if it does the latter, it's going to be dealing damage. If they kill it before, that means that whoever you've casted Inkswell on is hitting them that entire time, right? Because they're not moving when they're hitting the Embrace. So that's why the combination is so strong. You get the damage and the silence from the Inkswell and the Phantom's Embrace, plus your core hitting them, and at the same time, you know, if they have to stop moving, they're just going to get stunned, right? Very, very powerful utility. So Stroke of Fate, his nuke spell, pretty low cooldown at level 4, does a respectable amount of damage, and it also deals bonus damage per target hit. Now, this is not based on heroes or creeps. It's just any target. It can be neutrals, it can be heroes, it can be lane creeps, anything. More targets you hit, bigger damage. So this combination of abilities, you get a Stroke of Fate slow, you throw the Ghost on, you Ink Swell, or maybe you Ink Swell and then you throw the Ghost and Stroke of Fate. The combos are based on the laning phase itself and where you're standing and stuff, but these skills are very good at comboing together to just ensure a kill, right? This hero's kit is very, very strong at being able to get kills in the early game. So stat-wise, he's not too impressive. He's got pretty good base HP at 620, a little bit lower than 300 movement speed, 290. He's almost got 3 armor at level 1, which for a range support isn't actually bad. It's more on the decent side, I would say, for position 5s. And then your attack damage is 50 to 54, so you get the 52 average damage. But yeah, Grimstroke, if someone on your team has already picked up that really aggressive safe lane core and you just want to play with that guy, like you want to give him the tools that he needs to be able to secure kills, then Grimstroke is one of those heroes that fit the bill for sure. All right, next up, we're going to be looking at, where is he? Why can't I see him? There he is, Jakiro. All right, this is probably the hero that I'm going to be testing in the next couple of days because I feel like he has a lot of potential. And I feel as though a lot of people kind of let this hero just kind of skimp under the radar, They're not looking at him too much because, again, Dota has a tendency to be very meta-oriented, which means people find something that's really good, and then they keep doing that good thing, and there's not a whole lot of deviation. So I want to try Jakiro personally because he has ridiculously good level 1 stats, 740 health at level 1, 290 movement speed, which isn't the best, but again, his other base stats more than make up for it. His armor is right about average, 2.6, and his auto attack damage is on the higher side. Now his range is only 400. So he's not the best at being able to trade all the time, but what makes this hero such a beast of a laner is this skill right here, Dual Breath. Now Dual Breath, when you hit with this, it's going to apply a damage over time, it's going to movement speed slow and attack slow for 5 seconds. 28 attack slow at level 1 for 5 seconds is an enormous slow. Not many people have that much attack speed at level 1. Ursa's probably the only hero in the game I can think of who would even have an ability to counter something like this in terms of being able to auto attack. So 20 attack speed slow, and then for the second point, the damage doubles. So level 2 Dual Breath is just amazing. Once you hit level 3, you get 2 points into this, and then you get your Liquid Fire going as well, which is an additional 30 attack speed slow on top of that. So between the level 2 Dual Breath, which is 32, and then Liquid Fire, which is 30, it's 62 attack speed slow, which means most of the heroes in the game that you cast these spells on are not going to be able to trade with you. They just won't. They'll have to run away, they'll have to disengage, which of course gives your safe laner space, or, if he's slow and they're within kill range, maybe your safe laner actually just gets the kill in general. So his other skill that we haven't talked about yet, Ice Path, this is one that I feel is definitely worth a value point in some situations. Like if your safe laner doesn't have a stun and people are constantly TPing away from your ganks, then maybe like level 3 or level 4, you might want to contemplate putting a point into this just to make sure that you can really get those kills. Otherwise, if you're not having an issue with that, you pretty much just go for the max Dual Breath and the max Liquid Fire. These are your bread and butter skills. They're incredible in the laning phase. And like I said before, this is a hero that I'm probably going to be testing shortly. So maybe we'll do a more elaborate video on this hero once I have a bit more experience on him. All right, next up, we're going to be looking at Lich. This is the classic. Whenever you go into a Dota stream and someone's new to the game and they say, hey, what hero do I play? Most people are going to say, Lich or Wraith King or these heroes that don't really have a lot of buttons to press. But Lich has seen a little bit of a change in how he actually plays out the laning phase. Still really good. His skill set is strong. He's got the Frost Blast. It's 105 mana cost, but it still does 125 damage to the primary target. Now, it's a 2-part spell. So the damage itself hits the main target that you hit, and then the area damage is whatever is around him. But the damage and the area damage both hit the primary target, which means it's actually 350 on the Frost Blast at level 4 on the person that you physically click on. So this hero, very good at being able to deal damage in the lane. His next ability, Frost Shield, very similar to how you would use Inkswell in the lane, is a way that you can use Frost Shield as well. If you have those heroes that like running in, you apply the Frost Shield to them, they run forward, they hit something, they get a kill. Alternatively, this one has a defensive play as well, since it reduces physical damage that you're taking by a pretty big amount. 30% at level 1 is nothing to kid around about. So if someone's committing to you or your core, you just throw it on them. It slows whoever's chasing him for 6 seconds. Also deals damage in the meantime, might allow you to be able to turn. And then your third skill, Sinister Gaze. This is the one that was replaced Sacrifice, which was his old skill. But now, Lich, in addition to being able to, reduce physical damage taken, slow everyone around him, deal really big single target damage, they also gave him a stun. Now, his mana costs are pretty high, like 120 mana for a 1.3 second stun. Doesn't really seem amazing, but again, it can be used as a TP cancel if your lane's going really well. So you put a value point at level 4 or something like that. It's still a very valuable tool that you have in your arsenal. So in the early game, your health is going to be 600, 295 movement speed, not the fastest, and his armor is a bit on the low side. It's only 1. But his average damage is right about run-of-the-mill, and then his attack range is 550, which isn't too much shorter than the 600 range. Honestly, the difference between 550 and 600 attack range, because of things like, human reaction time, if a 600 range hero hits you, you should be able to hit them back with 550, because there's things like turn time and all that other stuff. So don't get too worried about, having 50 or 25 less attack range. Most of the time, if you're paying attention, you're going to get the counter hit off regardless. So again, Lich, really, really strong hero in the lane, can be paired with a lot of stuff. Oh, I just clicked the items thing. That was my bad. All right, next up, we're going to be looking at, where is he? Furion, another position 5 hero that I think is absolutely insane. So, this hero has the highest stat gain allocation of any hero in Dota 2, period. He just gets the most stats. The strength, agility, and intelligence combination gain that this hero has is higher than anyone else. And on top of that, he has almost 5 base armor. His high-end attack damage is 66, which is insane. So his average damage is pretty close to 60. It's like 58 or 59 at level 1. His movement speed's 290, which isn't amazing, but he's got 620 health, which is still very high, and he's a 600 range hero on top of that. But the main reason why this hero is so unbelievably good in the lane is Nature's Call. So Nature's Call summons trees. These trees at level 1 deal 27 damage apiece, and they have 550 health. Now, these trees in the lane, if you spawn them correctly, you should be able to have 4 of them on the bounty runes and on the first creep wave, right? If you have 4 trees, there pretty much isn't a hero in Dota that is going to look at that and think that he can contest, right? And if they do contest, you're getting a ton of damage, and you might even, be able to get a counter kill. So this ability is, like, amazing. One of the best laning abilities in Dota 2. Even if you don't want to play him as a 5, you can still run this hero as like a 4 or whatever, and he's going to do more than okay. So another ability that makes him great at the 5 role is just having teleportation. Now this just ports you anywhere. It's like a TP scroll on steroids, which means that if you're trading in the lane and you die, or someone's using the courier and you can't get items for your core player and he really needs them, you can TP back to base, you can get his items for him and teleport back. So if he needs regen, or if he needs to finish like his phase boots or something, you can be like the extra courier. And stuff like that might not seem like a big deal, but having finished boots in a lane where you're still winning, you can snowball that advantage even harder. It makes a really big difference even in the first 5 to 10 minutes of the game, especially since most of the time your mid player is going to be using the courier a lot anyway. So having a hero that can get back and forth between the lane, deliver items, just never really be out of the lane. He has low downtime, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Makes it really, really nice to have as a 5. But Sprout, it's pretty useful, I would say, more for ganking than the laning phase itself, because a lot of heroes are going to have tangos and quelling blades and all that stuff. And you can get really fancy with it. You can cast a Sprout so that it blocks them instead of you trapping them in the actual circle of the Sprout. You can just put it behind them and stuff like that. It's a bit more effective, but I don't really look at this ability and think of it as his laning tool. I think of it more of a ganking ability. So most often you're going to be looking at your Nature's Call and your teleportation if you want to play this hero in lane. But this guy is first pick material 100%. If you're a 5 player and you want to just join a game and be like, man, I really want to first pick, but I don't know what I want to play, this guy is your man. There is very few games where I would say Nature's Prophet's just not good this game. He just offers way too much in the lane. He's flexible. He can build any freaking item you want for your team. He just does it all. Extremely, extremely good hero. I would definitely say maybe tier 1 from a 5 position. All right. Next up, we're going to be looking at Ogre Magi. Let's just type it. There we go. All right. Ogre Magi. Now, this hero is another one like Spirit Breaker, where he just has an enormous amount of effective health against physical damage at level 1. He has 8.2 armor, level 1. 700 health. And he has 290 movement speed, which is not super fast, but his base damage is also really high. It's like 61 average or 62 average. So because he's melee and he has this insane amount of damage, high armor, high health, against those dual off lanes that are really looking to trade and trying to get their advantage through just, you know, getting you lower and lower health by chip damage and stuff like that, Ogre's great. His base regen also, 5.8. It's really, really high base regen for a hero that can essentially just walk in and beat someone with a club, or in this case, I guess a really kind of big piece of half-eaten mutton. But anyway, all right, his skill set. Fire Blast, this is your stun. This skill is probably not the one that you're going to be putting a whole lot of points into in the early game, but you will want to max it sooner rather than later just because of your ultimate. Ignite is your main laning utility. It's a 5-second duration, 26 burn damage, and a slow at level 1. So this skill does very, very high DPS. It slows, it allows you to stay in range and just hit over and over and over again, which allows you to kind of stack up that damage over time. And then finally, you have Bloodlust, which for 1 point is 30 attack speed, and you get the movement speed on top of that for 30 seconds. Now, personally, I don't play a whole lot of Ogre. I find the playstyle not really fitted to what I like to do, but because of the hero's base stats, his strength gain also being extremely high, along with his int gain being pretty good, his Ignite being a incredible utility to be able to harass and just get auto attacks off and such, and like the Bloodlust, you can definitely see this hero being someone that can more often than not dominate the lane in a lot of matchups. All right, next up, we're going to be looking at SKYWRATH Mage. So Sky is a hero that, again, we don't see a lot of, but the reason why this hero can be so lane dominant is because of 2 things. 1, Arcane Bolt. The ability does a lot of damage, right? It does 60 base, but it also does damage based on your total intelligence, which is a 1.6 multiplier. So that means the more intelligence items you have, or the more levels you get, the more damage this does just by virtue of having higher intelligence. So essentially the way this hero wants to play is you spam your Arcane Bolt a lot, along with your Concussive Blast, or Concussive Shot, excuse me, which also does 70 damage and slows on top of that, very, very long range, and it AoEs around the point of contact. So you use all your mana on Arcane Bolt, and you use Concussive Shot, and just keep dealing damage, keep dealing damage, keep dealing damage, and then, when you're low on mana, what the high-level players do is they will run to an enemy tier 2, and they will actually suicide to respawn. Now, a lot of people are kind of turned off by the idea of just, you know, adding a death. Like, a lot of people is like, oh, my KDA is going to suffer, and blah, 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 whatever. To put it bluntly, your KDA doesn't matter at all. It means nothing, right? Sure, if you're like 0-50, maybe you did something a little bit too wrong in the game, but the whole purpose of this hero is to get mana, throw it at the offlane, go get mana, throw it at the offlane, and the most efficient way to do that, and the quickest way to do that, is to die to the tower so that you come back with a full mana bar, you TP back to lane, and you continue throwing out your spells. That's basically what this hero in the laning phase does, and it's pretty much what he's always going to do. So in regards of stats, he's got 325 base movement speed, very fast hero, really good at maneuvering. His armor is almost non-existent. So that's why I was talking a lot about using your spells to harass and not really looking to trade right clicks. You are a 600 ranged hero, but your base damage is pretty... it's not good, right? It's more beneficial to just walk to the lane, use your Arcane Bolt, use your Concussive Shot, and deal damage in that way, and then do the strategy that we talked about where you just kind of go feed at the tower, respawn, TP back, keep using your mana. That will make your core player have a very easy lane. I've played with this support a bunch. It's really good. You just have to be okay with maybe having a few more deaths on your KDA than you're used to. All right. Witch Doctor is the next one that we're going to be talking about. This is a hero that he's been buffed pretty recently. His Maledict cooldown, I believe, got changed quite a bit. Yeah, it was 50-second cooldown before, and now it's 30, which means every creep wave you can essentially cast this ability, right? And the reason why it's so good in lane is because you get bonus damage on the hero based on how many auto attacks they take. The more you hit them, the more damage they take, so on and so forth. It keeps stacking with itself, and it does a lot, essentially. And his Voodoo Restoration is just a heal 4 mana over time, and it's a activatable aura around your hero. So whenever you activate it, you just stand near whoever you want to heal. Most likely in this case, it's going to be your core hero. You just sustain him in the lane. It keeps him alive. It doesn't cost that much mana once it's active, and it's very efficient actually in terms of mana to healing the longer you keep it on. Paralyzing Cask is his first skill, and it's a stun that also can deal damage, and it also stuns creeps for 5 seconds. So if there is an Enchantress or a Chen or someone has a Helm of the Dominator and you throw a Paralyzing Cask at it, the stun is going to take the creep more or less out of the fight. And this one is really good in situations where there's not a lot of creeps around and there's only, let's say, like 2 or 3 heroes. That's when the Paralyzing Cask becomes an incredibly strong tool, especially if it's level like 3 or 4, you get the 6 or the 8 bounces. You can basically stun lock someone in place for a long period of time, which is great when you have things like Maledict to make sure that they're taking that extra damage while they're stunned. So stat-wise, his health is 560. It's not the highest, but he's got 300 base movement speed, 1 armor, which again, definitely not the highest, but his damage is fairly respectable. So it's 56 average, and he's a 600 attack range hero. Now, normally I would look at these stats and I would think, okay, maybe this hero isn't really that good of a laner, just, looking at stats. But Voodoo Restoration, the Cask, and the Maledict are what make this hero really good in the lane. His kit is strong. He has Sustain, he has damage, he has Lockdown. He's able to pretty much cover whatever basis you need for that given lane, right? And he's a hero that you can definitely pick early on in the draft and not feel too bad about it later on in the game. So, the last hero on the list for the video of just strong laners that we are going to talk about is going to be Warlock. So this is another hero that I think I'm going to have to start exploring a little bit more in my own time, like during my stream and whatnot. But I wanted to put Warlock on this list specifically because of Shadow Word. Now, Shadow Word is the highest, or maybe it's the second highest. Well, either way, it's very high damage or healing spell at level 1. It's 15 damage per second for 12 seconds, or healing based on, if you use it offensively or defensively. Now, it's a 16-second cooldown. It costs quite a bit of mana, but for the cost, the damage and the healing are insanely high. Additionally, you got the Fatal Bonds. Now, the way this ability works is you link your primary target with random units in the AoE around that person up to 6. And the shared damage is 25%. So if I deal 100 damage to any target affected by that Fatal Bonds, everyone else is going to take 25 damage. So if you're in a lane with a hero that has a tendency to do a lot of harassing or has any AoE spells, and you happen to hit Fatal Bonds on both heroes, they're going to be taking essentially, 25 increased damage, or 25% increased damage from those abilities. So this ability in conjunction with Shadow Word means that most of the time when you're going for trades, as long as you're not being super over aggressive about it, you're going to win the trades. The heal, or the damage over time portion of the Shadow Word is going to either keep your core healthy or deal more damage to whoever you're trading with, and then Fatal Bonds is going to make sure that even when they back up and everyone goes back to neutral in the lane, you're going to be able to get extra damage on them because it lasts for 25 seconds. So if it attaches to creeps and the hero, just hitting the creep still deals damage to the hero because they're sharing that 25% damage. And this is why the hero is so good in the lane itself. Now, Upheaval is his third skill. It's not the best laning utility, but it does have its place in the mid game and stuff. But again, this video is more about just, strong lanes, what is going to help me win my lane in the early game and give me an advantage going into the early mid game. So we're not going to talk too much about this one. But looking at stats, he's got 720 health, which is actually pretty high. His movement speed is 290, so it's a little bit below average. 2.6 armor is like right down the middle in terms of armor for ranged heroes. And then he's got an average of about 54 or 55 damage and a 600 range on top of that. But most importantly too, 3 strength gain and 3.1 ink gain for a 5 position. I think a lot of people who maybe aren't even new to the game, but maybe intermediate players, have a tendency to underestimate how good having a high strength gain can actually be for a support. Imagine how many games you've been in and you say, I just want to buy a bracer, or I just want a cloak or a wand or something to give me a little bit of extra survivability. These types of heroes with the high strength gains, you don't feel that sense of urgency to get that small item that's going to give you a little bit of boost of survivability because you just have so much, base health due to your strength gain. So yeah, Warlock, definitely another hero that I'm going to add to my personal list of heroes that I want to play. So with that being said, all these heroes are ones that I put under the category of strong laners. This is just, my own discretion. Some people might disagree with the list. Some people might agree with the list. This is just my personal thoughts on heroes that I find particularly good in the laning phase in most cases. So that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys want to ever catch me live, you can do it on twitch.tv/Draskyl. That's DRASKYL. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do so at DraskyldOTA2 with a TWO. Thank you guys very much for tuning in, and we'll be back next time.